All right, folks, we're on live.
All right. Hi, gang.
Hey.
Hi.
Hello.
Well, Christy and Dana were the ones that kind of came up with this idea to do a little rap party for Devil's Canyon. So I thought it was a good idea to kind of, talk about the aftermath of the game and what we enjoyed about it, and the high points and all of that sort of stuff. I think it's kind of fun to kind of go back and figure out what worked, what didn't, and so forth. So I'll probably start just by saying, when I started the idea of this, and you guys were the ones that really came up with the the basic idea of where we were going with the story, but that's really all we had to kind of start this out with. So if I remember right, the three movies that we all kind of agreed on were Unforgiven, The Prestige, and what was the third one? Do you remember?
Was it Deadwood?
Yeah, it was. I don't know if it. Oh no, it was Tombstone.
Oh,
but Deadwood was kind of in the mix. That was something that somebody had thrown out there as a jumping on point as well. So when I was kind of putting the backstory of all of this together, that before we ever, started to play, in my mind, I was thinking that the supernatural paranormal was really going to be the thing that kind of took the back seat, and it would just be this ethereal kind of presence that was just there and never really take full center stage. I think The Prestige was the thing that we kind of latched onto to kind of add that to the story. And even in The Prestige, it wasn't really fantastical. It was all really based kind of in science and fact and so forth. So it wasn't really so overblown. So I never saw the finale that we had ever coming, until we had gotten into probably episode maybe 4, I think, maybe once we got into there and that little piece of parchment showed up. And to me, that was kind of the catalyst that really changed everything and put us on a completely different path from where I thought we were going. My thought was, with the Crimson Coyote gang, it was really going to be more of like a really true Western with a little bit of science and magic just kind of mixed in, as food for thought, and it really just went completely in a different direction than what I was ever really anticipating. What did you guys think?
I think that kind of meets with the expectations that I had too. Like with what we had organized in advance, it read like what you just described, like a Western with some, mystical glitter stuck to it, but yeah, like I thought when it, kind of started to go off the Western rails and go kind of onto the Scooby-Doo rails, it was fun. That's when it got cool, or cooler.
Yeah. What are your thoughts, Kurt? This was, I know, different than anything I think that you've played in recent history.
I think, I don't know why, but Tesla was on my mind when we started. And I was really into that idea in the 19th century of Tesla and electricity and this kind of, innovative. I mean, I just have images of Tesla in my mind, this electricity kind of going out. And so for me, building a character on that was really exciting.
I think you were the one that mentioned The Prestige, I think, in your choices anyway, right?
Yeah, I don't know if you framed it that way first, because probably Prestige wouldn't be the first movie I'd think of unless it was framed in the 19th century West.
Mm-hmm.
I probably would have gone space cowboy or something. I don't know. I mean, but maybe I did. Maybe I started with the Prestige. But yeah, but Tesla was on my mind. Kind of this intersection between magic and science was really interesting to me. So
yeah, and that was a
I
really kind of interesting element, and I love. Oh, we kind of talked over each other there for a second. I lost you. You guys hear me? Okay.
Yeah, you're good.
Okay. What I really liked about Julius was just how hyper focused he was in getting that Tasometer done. And I think that was really, for me as the game master for this, was me trying to kind of keep up with you and making sure that we were moving along a path to get you to that goal. And still tell the story, you know, of the town and all of that sort of stuff. But that for me was really kind of difficult to navigate. I think those two particular worlds. But in the end, I think that ended up being really the driving force, I think, behind the game.
Yeah, the Tasometer became like a really cool thing. And I just opened up a Wikipedia page on Edison and found that he invented this thing called a Tasometer. And I was like, that's cool. I'm going to take that, but I'm going to make it like someone else was in it. Like I got, you know, in this idea of Trump and this idea of cultural appropriation became interesting to me. So like, what if Edison didn't invent it and there was someone in his lab who did, and he took the idea and in a very kind of, you know, 19th century way ran with it because it was his lab, but there was like you know, an African American working in his lab who had actually invented it. And so I wanted to play with that idea a little bit, which was really exciting to me. That
yeah,
you know,
I love that aspect of it. Yeah, you know, where he was kind of the second fiddle that really was the greater inventor of the two.
Yeah, and he was like, "Fuck you! I'm going to go off on my own and really see what I can do with this thing."
Mm-hmm. Now, when in your research of the Tasometer, I mean, was the whole bit about contacting spirits and all of that sort of stuff, was that just something that you decided that this character wanted, or was there some speculation that, you know, this thing might actually do that?
At this time period, you look at the big figures, and Houdini, of course, is one of them. And so you're looking at also this idea. And I don't remember if Christy came up with it first or if she followed me, but I was either following her or she was following me, but this idea of the spiritual and the occult, and Houdini was really into that, right? He was into kind of the trying to trick people. I can't remember exactly what the story was around him, but I like mixing that with the idea of the invention of electricity and physics. So sort of the combination of physics and the occult seemed like a really nice place to live.
You know, it's funny, the podcast that is getting ready to break later tonight that I wrote, I had a little mention of Houdini and his fascination with the occult and all of that sort of stuff in that show. And the one thing that I, you know, learned and actually kind of knew a little bit about anyway, which is why I started writing about it in the first place, was that he was really opposed, you know, to the occult, and that he wanted to really bust those supposed psychics that were out there to show, yeah, okay, this isn't real. I think if I remember right, he had a woman come to try to contact his mother, or it had something to do with Arthur Conan Doyle.
Yeah.
And I think it was Arthur Conan Doyle's wife that actually was a psychic and so forth, and she was trying to contact Houdini's mom or something like that. And you know, she started speaking in English and so forth, and his mom never spoke a word of English or something like that. So yeah, I found that really intriguing.
Yeah, there was that modern magic guy who just died, I think, a month ago.
Great Mandini or something, right?
Yeah,
Great Randy.
Also, like his career was built on that idea of Houdini in the 19th century, kind of debunking these theories of the evangelical church he was doing, but it's kind of the same kind of idea.
Yeah. And then Dana, you had kind of created your character with a bit of an alter ego. Did you have Alice pretty much fleshed out in your mind when we started this, or did that kind of develop out of the gameplay?
Well, I knew Christy helped me work on this, and I knew I wanted her to be a Pinkerton, but because she couldn't be a Pinkerton that was basically out of the closet, she would have to be undercover. And there was a story of a woman, and I wish I had her name in front of me. She was the first female Pinkerton, and she would go undercover, and she would sort of embed herself in, the high society of the Confederacy and learn their plans and things like that. And she helped thwart one of the assassination attempts against Lincoln and stuff. She did some really cool stuff. So I just moved her story ahead about a decade, about a decade. And try to have fun with it. It was very hard, I will say. Improv is not my strong suit. So this game was really difficult, I thought. But
and I think what I found really interesting coming out of this was, it's been a long time since all of us have been together doing anything like this. And Mike and I, Hancock, have done a couple of shows together, in recent years, and I've worked with him on a couple of things. And Mike, I'm going to toot your horn a little bit by saying that Mike is one of the best improvisational actors I think I've ever worked with. And I roped Mike into joining one of my gaming groups here in town when he moved back to Evansville. And I think you had played with me like maybe twice before you left for Florida. Isn't that right?
I think once, and Jasmine came and just to kind of hang out, and that was about the end of that.
Yep. You're like, what the fuck was that?
She's like, I don't understand this at all. And I was like, I don't know. I thought it was pretty awesome. And then just never had a chance to really go back. She didn't tell me not to, but I was like, do you want to go again? And she was like, God, no. No, I don't. I was like, okay.
That was weird.
Yeah. She's not a theater person. But yeah, I think I'd done one, maybe two. And then that was pretty much it until we moved back. So. And then,
but jumping on to that, with the whole improvisational aspect, I mean, this one for sure is way more improvisational, I think, than anything else that I've ever worked on, for sure, as far as a role-playing game. But I think the fact that those of us that went to high school together have a certain connection with one another, even after all of these years, I think that really helped us, really fall into the rhythm of this game, I think, a lot easier than it would have been, say, had I done this like at a convention or something like that, with people that I haven't played with before, or that I know as well as I know you guys. So I think that did make it a little bit easier, at least for me anyway. But I think we've had all of these years of being able to, play off of each other, and it was easy to just kind of step back into those roles that we were in, back in high school, which, I think was really brought a lot of joy, to the game for me, was to bring back those memories of being up in the loft and rolling dice up there.
Mm-hmm. Which loft are you talking about?
Over at North.
I never rolled dice in the loft.
I know you didn't.
I
think you were already gone when we started doing that. I think it was like my junior year, probably. Isn't that right, guys?
I wasn't gone. I'm only a year older than you.
I know. Well, now I guess
you were doing like your junior year was my senior year, so that was
that's right. Yeah.
Love Rides the Rails and
right.
Barnum.
And I think Kurt, you and I started playing probably. I'm going to say probably towards the second half of my junior year, because I don't.
We were theater friends first, and then it was Dracula and Reinfeld. That's where we started. Well, Little Shop of Horrors, really, but I think you were. I don't know. We weren't very big presences in that, either of us, but it was really Dracula where we.
Well, I was very much a closet gamer back then, and I tried to, I think, hide that from a lot of my theater friends because
Yeah.
I didn't know what
I
they would
hit it
think
after
about it.
middle- I hit it after middle school because I thought I wouldn't be able to like make out with girls anymore if I still kept.
Yeah, yeah,
Seriously,
exactly.
I'm not kidding. Like
No, I know.
with
Yeah.
comic,
Right.
comic books, 5th and 6th grade, and I played Dungeons and Dragons. And now when I'm reading role-playing games, I'm like, oh my God, I used to sit in 6th grade and 5th grade and read rule books, like 300-page rule books, which maybe actually helped me to be academically okay. But it seems like, but then I left all that behind, and until last year, really.
Oh, really? So it's been a while for you too, then?
Yeah, I would sneak back in with you. I mean, when you'd invite me, I'd play a couple times, but I didn't make it a big. In high school, I kind of left all that behind until about 2 years ago now, when I picked it all back up in full, like crazily in full.
Well, it's good to have you back.
It's good to be back.
And Christy, so your little magician assistant, she was the I think the one that really stirred the pot, and what I think probably the biggest surprise for me, and I hope you'll forgive me for saying this, is how you really took the reins of this and ran with it. And remembering back, when we would play at my house and wherever else that we would play back in the day, Christy a lot of times I felt like was the one that just kind of sat on the sidelines and then said a few little poems to stir things up every once in a while. But just to see just how thoughtful and creative you are, after all these years. And I knew you were very thoughtful and creative back then, but I think you were so much more of a introvert back then. But I mean, like, you really shined, I think, in this particular story. And I love how you were brave enough to do the things that you did, and you certainly get the prize for the best props and backgrounds for this one. But I mean, it really did it really brought a lot of feeling and realism, I think, to something that really was pretty fantastical in the end. But I think it was because of your commitment to who this character really was. And I mean, I know you put a lot of thought into her background, her backstory, where she came from and all of that. So it's that type of gamer that I look for as a game master to really want to play with, somebody that really puts their whole heart and soul into it. So I want to thank you and all of you guys really for putting in the time to really create memorable characters, because I think these really are very unique and memorable characters that you would not normally see in a typical Western. That's what I really liked about these characters a lot.
Yeah, I love the seance. That was a great, Christy, when we did the seance. That was a great, when you brought all that to the table. That was amazing. That was the big surprising moment for me. I was like, whoa, what? Where did all that come from?
Yeah.
Thanks for all that. I threw props in to make up for my lack of improv skills.
But that was an incredible improvisational piece. I mean, I don't know how much of that you prepped beforehand, but with all the little tiles and all that sort of stuff and telling the story that you did, I sat back and just let you go on that. I mean, truthfully, I had stuff kind of in my mind about maybe what would happen during that seance, but then you just picked up the ball and you ran with it. And I'm like, well, shit, I don't have to do anything.
I thought that you two had worked together to put that story together because it came off so
too.
flawlessly. I was like, hey. I was like,
Wait a minute.
it's like recruiting
Somebody's
people to push the
been
story
emailing all week.
forward. Yeah. I was like,
That
wait,
was
we can do
definitely all
that?
her.
Yeah, that was a question that Dana and I had actually, was how much, if anything, was prepped beforehand in your scenes? Because the seance was not prepped, and I thought it was brilliant the way that after the little bits that I had planned, which didn't actually advance the plot at all. Tyner was able to jump in and come up with the spirits behind Bill.
That was the only thing I had prepped. That's it. It was just the spirits behind Bill. That was all I had. Everything else was you.
Yeah, that was cool. But
and-
so that was the thing that sparked the sort of Lovecraftian journey, I would say. Like if you hadn't brought those black figures behind Bill, I don't know if we would have gone Lovecraft on the whole thing. And then
really?
the letter, and then it went all the way Lovecraft. And of course, I don't know, so maybe some of us are watching Lovecraft Country. And
Oh my God, that show's so good.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But
So,
really,
you know,
I didn't see it going Lovecraft. I mean, I was really thinking more like almost Sixth Sense. That we were really going to be focusing more on spirits and the other world and all of that sort of stuff. And in my mind, those spirits were, and I think Mike DeWeese, you were the one that kind of latched onto it because they were kind of behind you and surrounding you. You were thinking that those were the spirits from your past of, you know, people that you had killed, you know, in your career as a gunslinger. And that's exactly where I was when I was creating those. But then they morphed into something completely different by the end of the story.
Yeah, exactly. And that was kind of the whole thing with Bill, was that sort of, you know, because I didn't plan a ton of details for Bill, but I had this sort of, you know, air of like reluctance and guilt, you know, were like the big things with him, you know, like he didn't, you know, because of his whole dumb luck thing, like he couldn't, if his gun went off, it shot somebody, you know, like he couldn't not be what he was, you know, and he, as much as he would try to avoid it or whatever, like that life just kept going for him. And that sort of overriding sense of guilt, I think kind of peaked during that seance, you know, scene. And you know, kind of looking back, I think that was kind of the turning point for his arc, you know, like from like reluctant retired gunslinger, I don't want much to do with any of this, but I'm getting sucked into it, to, you know, maybe he could help things and actually be redeemed, and all of that. So I do think that seance scene was pivotal for that character.
Yeah, I think it was too. And truthfully, I kind of was worried at the way that it went and how he was so afraid.
Yeah, he was freaked out, you know,
of those
you know?
things, that I was afraid he was going to like turn tail and like run, which I think probably crossed the character's mind at one point, you know, am I going to stay here, or do I get while the getting's good?
Is this just too much, and you know, what's my out?
And you really played that character well, like all the way through.
But thank you. But it like, as other people have said, like I'm not an actor, you know, like and this, as this game developed and I realized how improvisational it was, I got progressively more terrified of having to do that and having to be a productive member of the game. I was like, shit, what do I got to make up now? You know, like not to say that I didn't enjoy it, because I really did, but that it's just hard for me. And, you know, like how Kurt, you were saying last week, how you know, you're used to games where you're rolling a lot more dice, and those things are making the decisions and deciding what you're going to say and do. It was a hard game for me, just because I'm not good at that sort of thing.
Yes, you are. All the world's a stage, and all the men and women merely players. We're all actors.
Well, I used to write that down. That's great.
I just came up with it right.
That's brilliant.
Well, and Mike, in your defense, in my opinion, you are for sure an actor. And I think that even looking back at when we were in high school together, you were one of the people back then that I always enjoyed sharing the stage with, not only, you know, in the shows and stuff that we did, but in just about every aspect of life, really, you know. And I think you sell yourself short. And I think you sold yourself short back then a lot too, you know, and I know we talked about that a lot, you know, when we were younger, as well. You know, I think you had a lot of self-doubt about your ability and so forth, but man, you were great back then. And, both acting wise and musically, you know, I was always, it was always just a joy to be with you on stage.
Oh, well, thank you. And you know, this was a lot of fun. I haven't acted anything other than, you know, like regular social situations, or played a game in years. So this was great fun.
And so the other Mike, where did you come up with this character?
A little bit off of the character from Deadwood that I said, this is who my character kind of looks like.
Mm-hmm.
I liked the fact that he didn't seem to have much of a spine, and was incredibly indecisive. I was really struggling into not turning it into a comedy like I always do. And so I was really grateful that right from the start, Kurt's character, I went, oh. And then Christy's character came in and I went, well, I just want to see what these two do. I just want to see what their story is. I'm just going to follow them around at this point. And so at that point, I was decided I was just kind of a weird, old, lonely dude that didn't know how to interact with people because he never really dealt with the living. And so that's why he would talk to himself, and, you know, people would invite him to some place and he'd have to ask like 4 or 5 times if he was actually allowed to go because nobody ever did. So and at that point, it was just kind of, I don't know, try not to turn everything into a joke.
The transformation of you becoming a doctor was such a great.
I really enjoyed that.
I mean, when you became the doctor, and then that became a joke between us, and then it was Doctor, and you're a doctor, and then people are dying of the plague and or whatever, and you're trying to save them, and you don't really know what you're doing, but you maybe do, and then because you worked with bodies, that was just beautiful. I mean, it was just such a great theme.
Well, I really liked that because I had kind of planned from the beginning that my character was probably just going to be falling the entire time and would be this tragic character that just ended up like dying at the end somehow. And then once the doctor thing kind of came through and your character kept referring to him as a doctor, I was like, there's actually a lot of like hope here. Like he could find confidence in this. He might kill people by accident in the meantime, but damn it, there's something to live for. So that was really, really interesting to see how that started to turn. And I was like, well, this is where the character wants to go. So I'll just follow him along and mumble under my breath along the way.
And I loved how you played the small situations. I think that was what I loved the best, when it was just like this, you know, well, I picked this up or I put this over here, and oh, really? Like these very small details made it really beautiful. Like they, you know, I like the epic stuff, and I kind of live in that. And then you were like doing the small stuff down here, which I just love that, all the contrast between the characters. But I loved how you did that.
Thank you.
And I have to say, the whole doctor thing, I don't know what it was that made me want to do that with you, because I didn't plan that at all at the very beginning. I think that happened in the second episode, if I remember right, where the doctor came to you and he was like, hey, you know, we've got the cholera outbreak down there. I
invited him inside.
You want to come inside? I don't think that's a good idea. But there was something of a side story that I was kind of planning on with the cholera outbreak in the mining town. Where that was going to go, I honestly don't know. But that him coming to you was going to be the start of whatever that was going to be. but the fact that you picked up the ball then and ran with it as the Doctor, I was like, okay, now I've got to give him something to where he really does have to like live up to what it is that the actual Doctor of the town has really proposed to him. So that's why I ended up throwing in the prostitute, that had gotten beaten up and so forth. So I was like, okay, we got to figure out a way to, put him to the test. And that I think is one of the things about this particular game is you have to come up with ways to really test each individual, not only the group as a whole, but you have to test each individual character. And this game really, I've watched several live plays that have actually been run by the guy that created the game. And every single one that I have watched, they play it in one session. So he tries to get through all 5 chapters within 4 hours, basically. And there is no way we could have done what we did in just 4 hours. So I like that, we were able to really stretch it out like taffy and really see these characters breathe and really become, the heroic figures that they ended up being in the end. One thing I think that was hard for me to keep up with was the rising and falling. I found myself getting so wrapped up into your all storylines that you would make a roll and then I would forget that you made a roll, and then 10 minutes later I'd be like, oh shit, he rolled. Did he fail? Did he fall? That was hard for me to keep track of, but it was because I was so just engrossed in the story.
Yeah, I agree with that. And it seemed like there were times that, we were all into it and playing characters and the story was moving along, and, almost like it sort of went past the bounds of the game and we were all just telling a story, and it didn't, the roles didn't matter and the arc points and whatever didn't matter. And that's why we weren't keeping track of it, because we were all kind of knowing where things were going to go, or we're at least on the same page. And, it felt less like a game and more just like group storytelling at a lot of points for me. And where the mechanics of the game were just sort of something we had to try to keep track of. It didn't necessarily dictate the game anyway.
Yeah, I think the first episode, I don't think we rolled a single thing.
No.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah.
There was one roll. I remember.
Was there one?
Yeah, it was Dana. She rolled Dana or Dana. I'm gonna get that wrong for the rest of my life.
It's Dana.
It's like like this whole Spanish thing. Really, I've been working with somebody for a long time, and her name's Kaylee, and I said Kali, and she's like, "You've been working with me forever. It's Kaylee." I'm like, "Yeah, but it's not like." Yeah, I got it. Dana. Anyway, Dana rolled about an hour and 45 minutes into the night, like 15 minutes before the end. Because I was like, "Wow, that's the first time I played where someone's rolled a dice an hour and 45 minutes into the night."
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that was with the horrible cat story, right?
Oh no, that was the second episode.
Yeah,
later.
That was the second one.
When did I
I remember
roll
what you
for?
rolled for. I don't remember the roll, but it was a roll an hour and 45 minutes in.
So let's talk about the cats. Oh my God, that was.
Can I just say I went to the bathroom? Do you want me to tell you about my bathroom story?
Well, sure,
I just went to the bathroom right now, like when I just left. And there was a tree frog in my toilet.
Oh no.
A tree frog. Not like just a frog, a 3-inch tree frog with like the little suck things. He's been living in there. And he goes down through the water, down the pipe, and then comes back out and like he's there looking at you like, "Hey, you gonna go to the bathroom right now, really?"
I live here. This is a sad, sad life.
Dude.
Yeah.
So did you pee on him?
No, I went to a different bathroom. I was like, "Dude, really again?" It's like, come on, man.
I peed in the sink.
Luckily, we have more than one bathroom. But I mean, Jesus Christ. You open and there he is. He's like looking up at you every time.
Can't you just fish him out of there? Or do you want him to live there?
Family of them. And
There's a whole
so-
family in there.
Yeah, they now. So I'm talking about, when you flush the toilet, they live
Yeah.
down. So he swims down, or she, or they swim down the pipe, and then they live there, and then they come out and just like they're all just hanging out in the toilet. Does that happen with you guys?
Nope.
All the
They're
time.
tree frogs. They're not like they're the ones with the suction. They're really beautiful. They're like rainforest tree frogs. They're gorgeous. So you don't want to like. Yeah, I mean, I don't want to hurt anything, but you definitely don't want to hurt them. Yeah, that's what was happening.
I don't think there's anything that lives in my toilet that
Yeah,
I'm aware of. I
There
mean,
was a frog
probably
in
is.
our toilet in Michigan. Full disclosure. I don't
Oh, really?
remember.
yeah. I had to tell the kids like, look in the toilet, make sure the rainforest tree frogs aren't there before you do whatever you got to do. I don't know where we were in this conversation. But
I'm so glad that this is being recorded right now.
I think that was
Me
for the
too.
cats. That was before we went into the cats.
Mhm.
Oh my word.
Well, I told Mike Hancock that I threw in the Bobcat specifically for him because we had been playing Red Dead Redemption for quite some time, and we would always go on the hunt for a Bobcat. So that was a special Easter egg for Mike.
It was a good beginning to what I saw as his story arc, which was so interesting and rich with its highs and lows and potential redemption, and then that weird twist at the end. But when you talk about monetizing some element of this, just kidding, but I really feel like we could go back and transcribe Elias's monologues and put them together in a book for high school auditions.
Well, when we started this whole thing, I was in the middle of writing the podcast that's coming out tonight. And I had just finished that after, I think, the second episode. And I started to go back and listen to the videos of the first two sessions. And I was like, this is called The Great American Novel. There's actually a novel here. And truthfully, I'm kind of hanging on to those videos because I think I want to try to do something and like put this into some sort of like book form or maybe another podcast or something like that. So don't be surprised if I start sending stuff your way for editing.
Just keep the cats.
Oh yeah, I'm keeping the cats without a doubt. But truthfully, dude, that was like that was one of my favorite parts, was that whole bit with
That was
the
great.
Bobcat and the babies and the way you guys had to handle it and give me a bucket and
Yeah, it was beautiful. It was
That's the
just-
line that still makes me cry. do you have a bucket? Or... Such a terrible misunderstanding of what's on these.
Was great.
I'm so sorry. And I don't even like cats, so I was okay with it. And now my kid keeps asking for a cat for the last 2 days. I'm like, you don't know what your father's done with cats. You don't want that.
How old your kid? Not your cat, your kid.
He's 3.
Oh my God. You have
Yeah.
1 or 2 or
Just
3
the
or 4.
one. The other day he was eating dinner. He said, I have an idea. We're like, whoa, what's your idea? He said, we should get a cat. I was like, what? No, no,
no.
no, we're dog people. We have a dog. He just doesn't like it because he's old. So
He doesn't like being a dog. The kid doesn't like it. I thought you meant the dog doesn't like being a dog. I was like, oh, are we having identity issues with dogs now?
oh no, the dog thought it was a people until the kid showed up. So
Now we have to start calling dogs cats?
he kind of
How
acts
do you
like one.
identify?
Trust me, if you got a cat, that cat would hate the kid.
Yeah.
Because Quincy sure does hate Sullivan. It's taken him about 6 years now to kind of warm up to the kid. He kept his distance from him for quite some time, but now he's starting to warm up to him a little bit. But Sullivan's very loud and fast, and Quincy hates loud and fast.
Yeah, that's how Theo is, and Sebastian hates it. But he's a dog. Sorry.
Okay, so if we go back to the very beginning, there's another player that unfortunately was not able to see the game through because of a terrible internet connection, and that was Ryan Isaacson, my friend from work. And as tragic as it was, him coming in and out and just speaking whatever broken language that was. I went back and I watched that video probably 10 times just to watch Ryan struggle. And he had given me, a backstory of his character that you guys didn't really know about. And he said that he had lost two of his children when they were coming out west in a raid on his caravan, and believed both of them to be dead. And when he settled in Devil's Canyon, his wife left him, and he really just settled in there and became the blacksmith and was, alone for all that time. And little did he know, one of the things that I had planned was I was planning on having him reunite with his son, who had been taken in by the Crimson Coyote gang and was one of the gang members.
Oh.
So that was going to be like a pretty major little plot point there, and a dilemma for that particular character that I was personally really looking forward to see how that would play out, and it never got to see the light, unfortunately. So that was one element that I would have liked to have seen come to fruition. We kind of talked really about some of the things in that first episode that I really wanted to. Was there anything in that first episode for you guys that really kind of stood out? This would have been during the aftermath of the funeral and so forth, when you guys were really just starting to kind of get to know each other.
I remember you saying that at the end of that session that you were like, well, that didn't go anywhere where I thought it was going to go. And I was just wondering, where did you see it going?
I'm trying to remember exactly how that particular episode ended.
We were in the tavern, and we basically all invited ourselves over to Bill's house for a seance or picnic.
Thinking, is your
Late
character
night
just gonna be like,
That's
I
right.
was
The wine
looking
and
for
cheese
drink.
party at the ranch.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. And I was trying to. I think I was really trying to throw as many elements of the Crimson Coyote gang in there as possible, so that I was trying to introduce confrontations in there, and every time there was a potential confrontation that might be coming up, you guys went a different way, and you avoided confrontation.
Smell it. We smell it and walk the other way.
Yes.
Part of me is like, if you're really trying as a GM to push us in a direction, I'm not going there. Like, if you want a confrontation between us and the Coyote gang, in the other direction. Like, that's just I'm like, let's not do. Let's play with this a little bit. Let's bend it and twist it and see what we can do.
Yeah. Well, duly noted. I'll keep that in mind for the next session.
I mean, I'm not interested in derailing things, but I'm also not
you didn't.
interested
Yeah,
in
you
following,
totally didn't.
a railroad path. Let's let the story open up and play with possibilities.
Right. And I think as a GM, I think when we first started playing back when I was in high school, I mean, so much of what I did was very railroady. I mean, I had every little plot point, figured out exactly what was going to happen in certain beats and so forth. So as a young, inexperienced GM, I think that's what a lot of people really fall into. And a lot of people never grow out of that. And it took me a little while to start to really listen to my players. And I think as a game master or a dungeon master, that's something that you really have to do, is really listen to what it is that your characters are saying and let them take the lead from time to time. And that I think it's a valuable lesson that I think any game master really needs to learn pretty early on, is to follow the lead of the characters. And this game is, I think, a perfect way. You know, if people are wanting to get into gaming, I would by all means recommend this game as the first one to get into, because it's such a collaboration, and it forces you as the GM to just let the players do what they want to do, and you follow along and then help to create the world that they're creating around them. But yeah,
the mechanic of being able to take over the narrative is not in any other game to that extreme. Like
no, definitely not.
When you roll a certain role, you get to control. You become the GM essentially. And so that's not that, and we never really ran with that all the way, but that mechanic isn't in any other game that I know of where you take control of the game completely. I mean, there's a lot like the Powered by the Apocalypse games. When you make a move, depending what happens with that move, you can get a little bit of narrative control. Fate, you get some control of the aspects, but this one, you get to control the whole game when you take it over, you know. When you get a certain role. So that's pretty radical.
Yeah.
I was impressed, Tyner, the way that you showed such extraordinary patience with us and in scenes and just holding back. And I don't know how you did it. Of the first episode, I remember coming away from it knowing from our Facebook chat, like how rich the backstories were on all of these characters. And in a way, how guarded we all were in that first episode with sharing our motivations and our stories and you know, everything. And I was like, you know, like, I understand we all had a sense of like, well, this needs to unfold a little bit. Like the plot needs to, like, we need to feel comfortable with each other and get that. But I think that's what propelled me to carve out a portion in episode 2 with the seance to create the safe space for people to share and try to get a little bit of everybody's story out at that point.
Yeah,
so
and
this episode was a little dry for me.
It did move considerably slower, I think, than I thought it would. But I was totally okay with that because of the development of the characters, you know, letting them just kind of really come into their own just naturally, I think worked out so much better. And I think we told a much deeper story that way. It wasn't rushed at all, and so forth. And, you know, a lot of times when I'm running a campaign, you know, I do kind of take my time, but I like to urge the players to a completion point by the end of a session. You know, because a lot of times, you know, we have, usually when I play, I usually do it for about a 4-hour stretch. In most cases, we had 2 hours to do ours because of the distance between all of us, you know, being in Mexico and Vermont and St. Louis and all the different places that we are. So, you know, we had a little bit more of a limited time frame to be able to tell the story, but I think in doing so, it shortened everything, but expanded it in the same aspect, because I didn't feel like I was rushed to get you to an ending point. And yet every single episode that we had pretty much ended on a cliffhanger of some sort, you know, which I thought was really kind of neat. It really made it feel episodic in that manner. So the second episode of the seance, and we've talked about that already. I was so happy with that whole seance sequence. And Christy, you said you didn't have really any of that planned. It just all kind of came out.
I had at least the props that were gathered. So I had that much in mind. But aside from like the bits, I didn't have a narrative, you know, mapped out of how that would go necessarily. I knew I wanted to make a precondition of the seance that everyone had to share or do a confessional of some sort to open up in order to let something else in. And that was pretty much it, I think. I mean, I had the tiles prearranged because I'm not that fast with Scrabble.
But those were the things, I think, all of those little messages that you put up in the tiles, that's what set me off in the next episode of trying to interpret what you had actually put out there, and then started moving me in a different direction as the storyteller, to get a little bit more into that supernatural aspect of it, because that's not where I thought we were going at all. So that opened up a whole new door, I think, to the story, and set us along that path. And then in turn, moving into the third episode, the introduction of that little piece of parchment when you spent your plot point. Uh-oh, I'm running out of power. I'm going to have to find something to plug this into. You guys still hear me?
Yeah, try plugging it into the wall.
Yeah, I'm going to. So I'm going to move around a little bit here while I do that, because I got to get something to plug in.
Michael, you crank something to power up that phone.
I'm gonna crank until you get a plug.
Boy commits. He commits.
That's right. Just a little more.
More.
A little faster if you could. Yeah,
Still working.
just a little faster. We almost got it.
All right, now we have power.
Had a tour of your ceiling.
Yeah, sorry. Okay, so the parchment, when you spent the plot point for that little piece of paper to fall out of Elias's medical book, you didn't really have any idea, Christy, right, what was written on that,
Correct.
or did you have something in mind?
Nope, I knew other people would pick it up and run.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So in between times, then I had to kind of figure out, okay, well, what's on that parchment? And again, when I wrote that, that translation that was on there, I still wasn't thinking zombies. I was still going along the more spiritual path, but then how you guys ended up translating it, that flipped it again completely on its ear. I'm like, oh my God. And Kurt, I think you're to blame for that.
I didn't mean to do zombies. I was just like, let me get some really weird word in another language, and then hopefully nobody will know what it is. And then it can be like this open kind of word for interpretation. But you knew it was zombies. So
Yeah.
I didn't, because I'm not a big zombie fan, so I didn't really want it to be zombies, but I was like, what are like monsters in other countries called? And that came up, so I threw it in. It sounded good, but I wasn't expecting to actually go the zombie direction.
Neither was I, but that's where we ended up.
That's where we ended up.
And Bill, you had missed, I think, what was it, the third episode? Was that right?
I think so.
I think so.
And that
He
was,
had just stepped out after the seance to go confront somebody.
right. And it was also the episode introduced Jacques Lefy, the little Frenchman that was the arms guy that tried to get you guys to put the Gatling guns together.
Mm-hmm.
And again, that was me trying to kind of edge you ever so slightly back on the path, to the whole gunslinging aspect of the Wild West. And I'll be damned if you guys didn't dodge that too. And then you came up with the plot to try to convince Cornelius to go up, and Dana, I think you were the one that was kind of behind the whole Shorty gang showing up.
Dana. Is it Dana or Dana?
Dana.
Dana, like banana. Dana.
I thought it was Dana. All right, I'm still working on it here.
All right.
Um,
We haven't
But
known
yeah,
each other that long, Kurt. It's all right.
No, I've known you forever, but it's still Spanish. It really throws things off.
but Anna, you were the one that came up with the whole Shorty Gang idea, right?
Yes.
Um,
Well, but
and-
you said, I mean, you planted the idea that the other guys knew another gang was, or the Coyote Gang knew another gang was encroaching on their territory.
I did. Yeah. Yeah.
So I just ran with that.
Yep. You embellished on that. Yeah. And which then led the group, I think, to push the Crimson Coyote gangs to intercede on the guys up in Montrose, and hopefully, you know, maybe thin the herd a little bit, which then again made me as the GM go, okay, now what do I do? there's no bad guys in town. But the beauty of it is that you guys had translated the script and read it out loud, and I was like, okay, now I got them. Now I got them.
Oh, I have a question for Elias,
Yes.
Michael.
Yeah.
So did you know that Elias was going to take that dark turn when he killed Cornelius, and I can't remember the other
Mhm.
guy's name. Did
Yeah.
you know from the beginning that he was going to do that? Like a
No.
dark turn there somewhere like that?
No, I thought he was, no, I had hoped that he would not rise. He would just keep falling and maybe get to the point where he thought violence was the answer, but he would end up not actually having the guts to do it when presented with it, that he would basically fail at saving other people. He finally actually has a shot and he has to do a bad thing, but it's ultimately good, but he wouldn't be able to do it. And so I was kind of hoping it would go that way, but then when actually presented with it, I was like, at this point, I think he has enough confidence in himself to actually go through with it. And he does now see that this is for the greater good, and he has to take
The
a
greater
stand
good.
at some point. And so at the beginning, no, I had no idea. I didn't think he had it in him. But after having hung out with a bunch of people and being involved in the seance and everything, and things kept getting weirder and weirder, I think he finally realized that, you know what, I can reinvent myself at this point.
I thought it
So-
was completely shocking. Like, it was such a great, like, cinematic moment to
Mhm.
that character to just turn like that and go, is he really going to do that?
Well,
He did it.
thanks. I had talked to Chris about a little bit afterwards, especially I think it was the fourth game night
Yeah.
where we had
Mhm.
jumped around in time so much. Because whenever I've played any of these things, I always view them as like a series that you would see on like television, but like on HBO or something. So like it can get gritty, it can get real, but I see every scene with different camera angles and stuff like that, and everything cuts together. So I never feel like I'm reading a book. I feel like I'm watching a show. So when I had that moment to do that, I was thinking, okay, if this wasn't a show, what would you see? You'd have the tension that builds up. You'd see him, doing that. And then afterwards, just sitting in a room by himself, basically having to come to the realization that he had just done that. And there's no going back. This is who he is now. And where does he go from here? So in my mind, this was like a Western Breaking Bad that I kept watching over and over. So where the characters keep doing dark things, but then you like them again later anyway. So.
And that episode, I think it was actually the 5th episode where that happened.
Okay.
Without question, out of all of them we did, was my favorite episode of all of them, because of all of that Quentin Tarantino-esque kind of time jumping, where we were, watching what two characters were doing, and then we would jump backwards in time and then see what these guys were doing at the same time that the other characters were discussing things at the doctor's office. We see what's going on at the hotel, and then there's the shootout, and then Lillian is running up to the magic camp to try to escape, and all of this sort of stuff. And I mean, just the dynamic and the rhythm of how all of that pieced together. I have no idea how we made it happen the way that we did, but my God, it was probably that. And I will say this without hesitation, my favorite episode of any game I think I've ever run in all the years that I've been doing this. That was a really, really cool moment. That little 2-hour stretch of storytelling was really, really cool.
That was definitely my favorite of all of them, because you could see where stories could intersect, but you weren't entirely sure. Like if they don't get there in time, they're going to intersect somewhere else. But if this shootout, if they're still pinned up here, or if they're going down the back, they're going to bump into somebody else. So I like the fact that you could see where it was going, again, like watching a really good show, but you don't actually know until you get there. So you have all that anticipation and build up, and you kind of hope it goes in one direction, but then you start going in another, and you can abandon where you thought it was going because you're excited to find out where you're going to end up. And I really liked how well that worked. I was really surprised it did work, because it was a lot going on. But it was awesome.
Well, and then that brings us to the finale and the culmination of the zombies coming in. And what was the most kind of interesting or shocking moment for you guys of that final episode?
How much time we just sat on the hill waiting. I mean, really, there was a decent amount of time where it was just kind of waiting to find out how it was going to unfold and what was going to happen, but it didn't feel like stagnant. I thought it kind of kept kicking up the apprehension and sort of the excitement of what was going to ultimately unfold. And then what ultimately unfolded was completely different than what I would have thought it might have been. Funnily enough, that's not really a word, but my favorite moment of that episode was when Bill rode back down the hill and discovered Elias falling out of the window. And he just pulls his horse up and he's like, all right, it's good to see you. Perfect timing. Come on, we got to go. Not even recognizing that he was falling backwards out of his own house. Just, all right, get on the horse. We got to go. I don't know what's going on here, but come on, get on the horse.
But, yeah, we gotta get.
And the fact too that, Mike, did you realize that the other zombie, the one that wasn't Cornelius, that he was still alive, or not alive, but still moving?
I think I kind of forgot that. I think that just missed me. Yeah, that I think I was as oblivious as my character seemed to be.
Yeah. Well, and that left it open perfectly for me to be able to have the zombie outbreak at the brothel. Because we had one still roaming around in town, there had to be something that would draw you guys back in to add a little bit more of a dire consequence, leading up to the actual zombies coming back into town. So you have some in town, you have some coming back to town, and you guys are kind of caught in between. So that was fun to
Did we forget to kill
play
the
that aspect of it.
Town?
No, Mike went back.
Killed them all, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. I got worried there. I was like, oh no, hanging Chad.
But yeah, that was fun for me.
There are a bunch of cholera patients left over in town, though, right? We did leave all the cholera patients.
Yeah, we didn't cure cholera. They're just
no, yeah. We didn't resolve really what happened to the mining town down there. Hopefully, the doctor, was able to get things back together.
That can be our Christmas special.
I'm gonna spend my last plot point. That doctor died. I took over the town.
A cholera Christmas, starring the Crimson Coyote.
Is it a musical, please?
Of course.
Yes. Start writing.
Well, and then finally we had the moment where the eclipse was coming in, and the outbreak of all of the spirits, coming from the portal, and then embodying each individual character. And I kind of threw out a couple of ideas of the ancestral history coming into each of you, and you being filled with all of the knowledge of history and all of that sort of stuff. But then you guys really just picked up that ball and ran with it, and really embodied certain elements of historical characters, to really breathe a lot of life into that final battle too, which I thought was really pretty cool there too. So it was fun to listen to you guys, talk about, the Vikings and the Norse gods, and the gladiators and the plague doctor and all of that sort of stuff. That was a cool element, again, that you would never see in a typical Western, without a doubt.
Well, you said to be as crazy, like it can be
Yes,
as outlandish,
yeah.
crazy.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, he wants something big and weird. So, okay.
Well,
But
it was funny because I had, like, I think I went first. I think I described it, and I was just like, well, Bill goes around and like shoots some people and ends up things, and then everybody after me was like, my ancestors trod across the battlefield, and roaches and rats and plague infested critters are gonna attack. I was like, oh shit, man, I really missed my opportunity there to.
Yeah,
Do
but
it
that was
now.
so
Do
Bill.
it now. What would you do?
Exactly. Well, he'd
but
probably do the
truthfully,
same thing.
Bill, even when you were doing that, I was imagining a Roman gladiator in your body as you were describing it. That's what I was seeing. I was just seeing this big hulking like Roman gladiator that was going in and bashing these things and shooting and so forth. So I mean, it totally fit, I think, within the descriptions that everybody else came up with after you.
It was just funny. Like internally, I was just like, oh man, like I didn't have any ancestors. I didn't have any, crazy rat hordes. Nothing. I just shot people. But it worked.
Yeah, and I liked the heroic ends and the tragic ends that you guys came up with. And I think on the tragic side, watching, Elias, kind of come into his own, and then ultimately, unfortunately not lasting probably much longer after, that final battle, even though he did find love and have a child, he didn't get to see his child grow up and so forth. That was really kind of a rather sweet, and tragic moment. And also with Julius, watching, your character who had, really prided himself in being such an intellect, and then in the end losing that ability through all of this, I felt was really, a very heartbreaking moment, to see this guy, that he had spent his life trying to build this thing and then was never able to really achieve. I mean, he did in a moment achieve what he wanted, but never to really be able to really see it to fruition and make a name for himself was really tragic. Is Kurt still with us?
I'm right here. Oh, did you mention?
Oh, there you are.
He can't
Yeah.
find the words because of the lightning bolt. So
Oh, are you talking about me right now?
Yeah, I was just talking about you.
Say that again. Say that again. I was in my own head. What did you say?
Well, I was saying that I think that
What did you about Elias on that one?
Well, then I moved on to Julius and
Oh.
his path of losing his, not sanity, but losing his intellect, through the lightning strike and all of that sort of stuff, and then not really being able to achieve what it was that he wanted, as far as fame and fortune and glory, for his scientific achievements, that he really spent the rest of his life, never really being able to live up to what his potential was.
Oh, that, yeah. Yeah, I was actually thinking about that at the same time you were talking about it. Yeah, but yes, because I was thinking about how I have like a lot of friends that are very intellectual and have a tough time connecting to people, and or having relationships, and they don't have families, and they do their intellectual stuff alone, and I kind of felt like that's where he ended up in life. That he had a tough time connecting with people, and he achieved this, but then wasn't, nobody noticed really, only a very small community. And then, his work wasn't published, and Edison took his work and he went off to live alone, to study more, but not really achieve anything in the traditional sense. And that's a sad story.
Yeah, it really was. And then we got to see Bill actually do the opposite and then live up to his potential, and then come in and take over the town as the new sheriff. So that was a really nice and pleasant end, for him as well. And I like how the ladies kind of helped support each other in their own endings to their stories as well. That was really kind of neat to see.
Yeah, I felt a little bit of regret that I didn't cap off my closing story by mentioning that Lillian never dabbled in the occult again.
No.
And instead really devoted herself to this world, which was sort of connected to her parting shot, which was to try to provide a path of liberation for the women of the town. So there's that. I really admired the ending stories of all of the characters, and especially was like super moved by the more tragic, pathetic endings of several of them.
Mm-hmm. Well, do we have any final thoughts?
Well, since I was away on a quick break while we talked about Bill's end, I really, because I kind of thought of Bill as like kind of the most stereotypically Western character.
Yes.
There, I kind of wanted him to have a most stereotypically Western happy end, like the gunslinger becomes the sheriff, kind of like almost cheesy, sort of stereotypical spaghetti Western ending, and it worked out that way, and I thought it was nice.
Mm-hmm. It did.
With Dr. Julius, I felt like, holding Lillian's hands there in that really powerful moment, I felt like he sort of connected to her. But the fact that he was so particular about everything, about his suits, about his room, he just didn't know how to engage in any other way. He didn't know how, he could never invite someone into his room for anything but a conversation, right? So he was very, and that's, that was why he ended up leading a very lonely life. He couldn't connect with people in that sort of physical way, which I thought was really interesting.
But that was also, I think, what was really charming about that character. It was his fastidiousness, and
that's one thing I love the most is how he would. I mean, it was my favorite moment when someone would come in the room and he had to make everything stuff before they came in.
Yeah, and I felt like that there was this awkward, budding, almost romance between Julian and Lillian. Were you kind of trying to push it in that direction a little bit, Kurt?
It was more like I responded to her to Christie's description of her character and wanted to build on that.
Mhm.
So that there was like, and I actually think there's some sort of there's sort of like the idea that the suffragist and the social movements that she was involved in, the social movements that Dr. Julius was naturally involved in because he was partly African American and his mother was a suffragist. And so that kind of connection as people that were outside of the mainstream and then finding each other here, but then quite not knowing how to connect in this weird town, I feel like was the story there. It was like, I wouldn't call it a romance because it was like commonalities, but sort of commonalities that were kind of going like this the whole time, which made it really interesting to me.
What are your thoughts on that, Christy? I mean, did you feel that there was like maybe just that hint of like an unrequited love? Because that's what it felt like to me. It was just like unrequited, I think, from both ends is what it felt like to me. Did anybody else feel that?
From the very first,
Yeah.
from the very first one, I thought those two were going to have a failed love interest because I didn't think Dr. Julius was capable of it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really thrilled that everybody's nodding and that you saw that, because I intentionally resisted it to create tension within the story. And I don't know how the character feels. I feel like I was always sort of operating in this on the plane of like, well, there's my actor, and the motivations of the character, but then there's the story. And I felt like I spent most of my time and most of my plot points playing with the story and less in the character. But that was one of those places where I didn't want there to be a successful romance, but I thought it would be awesome if people were shipping them just a little bit,
Yeah.
No, then it worked perfectly. Like that's exactly the feeling that that I got, kind of watching your interactions. And I thought that that Kurt's character was brilliant in that his, he had his fastidiousness, but you could tell that he couldn't help it. Like he wasn't being uppity or snobbish. He literally couldn't help it. Like it was just a part of his character that couldn't go away, and him playing those sorts of things around that characteristic really added so much depth to the interactions that he was in and that character. I got a lot out of that.
Well, cool. This was a lot of fun, and I'm glad that we had the opportunity to tell that story. And I hope that maybe we can come back and revisit, maybe not Devil's Canyon, but this particular game mechanic again, and create something new. I love that it's self-contained. It has a definite beginning, middle, and end. And so often I think as a GM, you get into something and then you do a campaign and it lasts for however long it lasts, and then it just kind of peters out at the end. Kurt, I'm sure you've been a part of plenty of games like that.
That what do you mean that
just kind of peter out at the end? You're playing, and then a couple of the players have to go off and do something else, and it never has a definite ending.
Yeah, the only one that happened for me, well, I haven't played that long, so my campaign was just ongoing until the pandemic hit, and we stopped playing because we couldn't get together again. And then we met back online and we started a new campaign, and now they want to go back to the pre-pandemic campaign and pick it up. So it's like, I don't know, for me, like we haven't reached it. I haven't reached an ending with any of the games that I started a couple years ago. But that's because they're not games like this one where there's a character arc and it ends, right?
Right. Yeah.
Dungeons and Dragons can go on forever.
And I guess, I've been playing pretty much nonstop since high school, and Ryan Shoy and I played quite a bit, especially into our 20s and early 30s, quite a bit, with a couple of different groups, and we had the Marvel game that went on for a long time, the one that we had started back when we were in high school, that actually got revived several times with different people over the years. And I think we finally, maybe didn't finish it, but we played the last campaign of that in the late 2000s, like maybe 2007, 2008. But I've had vampire games, I've had lots of other different things that just never really completed. Now, Mike Hancock, you were part of the Marvel World War II game that I did, and I think you jumped into the second session of that, and that had a definite beginning, middle, and end, and it was just designed to be that. But so many of the games that I've had over the years, we just kind of stopped playing, just kind of mid-game, and it always just felt empty to me, where I'm like, God, if we would have gone maybe a couple more sessions, we could have finished it, and told a final story. So
yeah, I like that wrap up. Fiasco is a game like that too, that you play for maybe 1 or 2 sessions and it wraps up. Much like that's another one. It's like a Coen Brothers movie RPG. You create the movie together.
What was that one?
Fiasco. I think I've got
Fiasco.
That sounds awesome.
Yeah, it's a Coen Brothers movie. And here it is. Here, Fiasco. So it's
okay.
It's like a Coen Brothers movie. Kind of it has mechanics where you build a story together. Another one that I'm really interested in playing is One Night, pretty much, which is called Icarus. Have you heard of Icarus?
Mm-mm.
It seems incredible, and I think it would be really good for this group to play it. If we can get together for a night or a Saturday or something. But you build a civilization together, and you play a character in that civilization, and by the end of the game, in 3 or 4 hours, you build a whole story in the world of the civilization, and then the civilization falls through a dice mechanic. So
wow.
Another interesting one I think would be to explore Icarus together. I think this group would really enjoy it.
Yeah, that's cool. I'll look into that. Yeah, I saw that Fiasco game at one of the local gaming places here, and almost picked it up. The guy I was talking to behind the counter was highly complimentary of that system. So yeah, I'm gonna have to check that out. So
I have another question for you,
yes.
Tanya, real quick.
Yeah.
Before we move on. You were the novelist. You were also all of the other characters, the non-playable characters. I thought they were really great. I loved all your characters, of course. If you were to write a character for yourself and not be the novelist, what would you have done?
Ooh. I probably would have been the magician.
Right. Duh. I should have guessed that.
That's a good character. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely would have been. So Christy and I would have been in cahoots, certainly, with one another. And truthfully, I probably would have been working in opposition to her, because I really don't think that the magician was. I think he was a con man. And he did his best to try to get what he wanted out of every situation, which was really just money, whereas I think Lillian was more of a really more altruistic and really was wanting to connect with the spiritual world. I don't think that the magician actually believed in any of that. That it existed at all, but he would take advantage of people in order to get what he wanted, for sure. Yeah,
a bit like lead player.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
I did try to use some of the spiritualism and the magic and really go with that. And I think that came about totally separately. To go back to Kurt, I don't know that either of us were following each other. I think it just had to do with the time and the way that those countercultures overlapped at the time. And spiritualism was one of the areas. This was one of my questions for everybody is, what did you research? And I know, you've mentioned researching the Tasmeter and Edison, and of course that character made me look into that as well. But I spent a fair amount of time on a resource Dana recommended, which was, I think, was it Unobscured?
Yeah.
The podcast.
Yeah.
They had a season talking about that spiritualism era in America. And so I kind of wondered if anybody else had done some really random side research in the course of looking at your characters.
I did not. No. I really don't usually do any of the spiritualism type stuff in games or anything, or movies or anything, which was why I was surprised that I enjoyed this particular storyline so much and was so curious about where everything was going. I honestly never trusted your character as far as the spiritualism went, because I thought because you were working with the magician, maybe you were just making it up all along. You wanted to get out of town. You had some sort of secret, and this was the front you were using. So from a character's perspective, I was never really sure if I could trust you. But as far as actual research goes, not really. I probably should have.
I
Where did
thought
that
maybe
change?
they were into medicine.
Into medicine?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, any research I did would have been more than Elias would have known. So, but
I
yeah,
think your
because
opinion of her changed, though, don't you think?
it did by the end. Yes, absolutely. But at the very beginning, I trusted Dr. Julius entirely because he just seemed to be so disconnected from normal interactions with people that like his work was his life. And that was pretty obvious. But your character, I was never really sure about until we got further into it and stuff. And then once we actually had the seance, it was basically a 180. At that point, I was like, oh no, this is real. And she actually is connecting with things and it's not a fake thing. So, but that first full episode that we did, I'm not usually big into the spiritualism type stuff, like poltergeist and stuff like that, just because I don't understand the rules of the universe usually. And I feel like it's too easy for a show or a book or something to throw something in and go, oh, but the magic doesn't work in this situation. And it's like, well, that's kind of convenient. So I assumed that you could not actually talk to spirits at the beginning. So I was pleasantly surprised when they showed up behind Bill. So
I think it's right of you to be skeptical of her.
mm-hmm. It changed pretty quickly, but yeah. I don't know. Mike, did you do any research on your character? Or?
Did you watch a lot of Westerns?
No, I didn't. And it occurred to me that maybe I should, but then I resisted that because I thought the character just, A, he wouldn't know anything about it. And B, he wouldn't necessarily care to know anything about it. Like, a lot of his stuff was very face value. And, the fact that he kind of grew to accept the other characters for what they were or what they presented themselves as, I think was enough for him. And that it was kind of part of his transformation. And it was just kind of being able to take people at face value, there are people in the world that didn't want to shoot him or have a shootout with him or have a beef with him or whatever. And that was enough, like he didn't need to know everything about what was going on. He just needed to know that the people around him were all right.
Well, so now we're looking into starting a new campaign in the old Marvel universe with our original team of Irishan. And I don't know if you guys, some of you I know saw this on the Facebook page that I've already dove in head first into creating the campaign for that, and already have the whole thing kind of plotted out, at least, you know, in my head as to where we're going. And some of you have already kind of interjected a few things that I'm already starting to kind of latch onto that, you know, is going to maybe help expand that even more. But just to let you all know where I'm going with this, I'm hoping to bring back some old ghosts from, not in the literal sense, but from the original game that we had played so many years ago. So you'll see some familiar faces in there, but I'm also really trying to tie it into the current comic book continuity as well, and kind of see where we are and where our characters fit within that continuity. And one of the things that I've already mentioned is the Strange Academy that Christy and Dana are somewhat connected to. Christy for sure connected to, because I think you're the headmistress of the Strange Academy in Chicago. That The Strange Academy is a new book that has come out in the Marvel Universe that is really kind of like the magic version of the X-Men. And it's based actually in New Orleans with Dr. Voodoo as the head teacher of that facility down there. I thought it would be kind of cool to have, you know, like some other Strange Academies, you know, across the globe with other teachers, you know, that are bringing in students and so forth. I had an epiphany last night that I think that the Chicago Academy has 13 students, and they only allow 13 students at any given time. And when one of them, you know, reaches the point where they're able to be released into the world at large, then they're replaced, you know, with a new incoming individual. So Christy, one thing I'd like for you to maybe think about is, who are your students?
We're old. How old are we now in this world?
We are the age that we are now.
Okay. That's why we have our own names.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right.
So we have aged to the age that we are currently. And believe it or not, Kurt, I still have the original character that you and I drew up at your house, that Psy Ghost,
crazy.
After all these years. Yeah.
I had all my original stuff. Yeah.
So I was able to kind of go back and look at that character. But the whole bit about the Sentry, I think, is going to be really key, I think, for your character. And you,
my character?
Yeah.
What's Sentry? What's a Sentry?
Well, did you read the little thing that I posted on the...
I will.
Okay. Yeah.
I haven't had time yet. I promise.
Read that, because initially your character had, in addition to having like telepathy and
I read
telekinetic.
I read that. Yeah.
Telekinetic powers and stuff like that. He also had access to the Dark Force dimension as well.
Yeah.
Well,
Like
yeah. In recent years, there's been a storyline centering around a character called the Sentry. That the character,
that guy, yeah, he can't control powers or something, right?
Right. Yeah, and he was erased from the Marvel continuity. He's always been around, but because of his connection to this entity called the Void, he was just erased from the memories of all of the superheroes that, you know, he once called friends. And then he kind of came back and he went crazy and just about destroyed the Avengers, and was eventually thrown into the sun. And when he was thrown into the sun, the Void then went back to you. So you're in a constant battle, almost like a possession almost of this particular entity that's really trying to force you to do bad things. So that's going to be a real key.
I read that storyline of the Sentry in the Avengers recently. So.
Oh, did you? Okay, good.
Something I think I did. Yeah. So.
Okay, good. Yeah, so I'm glad you have a little bit of a working knowledge then of that.
I'll catch up on it.
Yep. And then Dana and Christy both will have certain connections to the X-Men because Dana, you have a portion of Limbo now that you have claimed as your own, and you kind of rule over that as the kind of queen of that area of Limbo, which you share with Colossus's sister Magic. She's pretty much the ruler of the dimension, but you have basically a continent within that dimension that you rule over, that you have kind of taken the demons and so forth and reshaped them into kind of twisted versions of the Wonderland characters from Alice in Wonderland. And Dana, do you remember, that being a part of her background?
I know that there were portals, and I know that they went to Wonderland, but I don't remember how I would use that. It's like Christy was like, we were trying to talk through about trying to remember any of the storylines or anything from ages ago, and I was just like, I just can't remember. I remember sitting in the room, I remember rolling dice, I remember laughing and playing, and I don't remember any of the words. So I'm gonna have to get a refresher.
Well, if there's, I may see if I can find these books online where you can download them for free. There was a mini series back in the mid to late 80s called Magic, M-A-J-I-K, I believe. This is the way it was spelled. And Magic is Colossus's sister. And that's who we kind of based Shard off of to a certain extent when we created her. Okay. So she is kind of a quasi-ruler of this limbo dimension, which centers around magic and a demon called Belasco, and another demon called Sim, and Nastir, and the Goblin Queen, who is the clone of Jean Grey from the X-Men.
Okay.
And the Goblin Queen has been a pretty big thorn in the side of the X-Men for a long, long time. So she.
I had this comic book.
What's that?
I had
You
this
have it?
first edition. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I discovered I have the Wolverine first appearance.
Oh, do you? Like the Hulk?
Hulk, yeah.
Oh, wow. Like the actual book?
The real book.
Dude, that's worth a fortune.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I have it.
Well, you need to get
There's
that
the
thing.
first edition where he appears on the last panel. I have the one with the yellow with the Hulk where he's really on that first cover.
Yeah, that's worth a fortune. You need to get that thing graded.
Like, what do you do with it?
There's a resource you can go to online, and I'd have to look it up to find the exact name of it, but you can send it off and have it graded, and depending on the grade, then they'll give you the current market value on that book. But yeah, that thing is worth a lot. Now, I had the very first issue of the X-Men for a while.
The X-Men?
Yep. And I bought it when I was about 9, I think, in like a quarter bin at the original book broker here in town.
Yeah.
And then when I was about 27, 28, I think I sold it for about $700. It was a ratty copy too. Yeah, that thing's worth way more than, if it's in pristine condition, it's worth way more than that. But I got $700 out of that thing.
Yeah, the Wolverine's in pretty good condition.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would definitely send that off and get it graded. I'll see if I can find the link to that.
I just want to, what do you do with it, right?
Yeah, well, you definitely need to protect it.
It's in the United States, because here you can't keep comics here and keep them in good condition.
And then Mike Spartan, I did forget to put your adamantium bat on your character sheet, so we'll need to make an addendum to that for sure.
Oh yeah, for sure.
But if you note in your little character description that I posted, one of the things that drew you to Vermont were these cairns. And there's a certain, once you reached Vermont, I think your powers really took a huge jump in ability, because I think originally that character really only had like vibration control was his main power.
Yeah,
but
which
now
I think we translated into like seismic things.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So to me, that really said, okay, well, he's got a definite connection to the earth, and you with your kind of, for lack of a better description, woodsman approach, I think, that you've kind of lived by all of these years. I think it fits in really well with that. And I wanted to try to tie that character in, to more earthy type powers and so forth. So that's why I ended up, giving you a little bit more of a wide range of powers kind of surrounding that, like with weather control and other
Geoforce.
Yeah.
I looked into that a little bit. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
No, that'll be fun.
And so these cairns, I think, are the thing that really, your connection to those is what has brought out these new powers that he's discovered, later in life. And so I'll be kind of diving into that a little bit more in this campaign as well. So, Christy, you wrote something in your little addendum on the Facebook page about, let me see if I can find it here. Was it the Fermi Institute?
Fermilab National.
Yes. I knew nothing about that until I saw that. And then I went online last night and started to look into it. And I'm like, oh, holy shit. This is a wealth of potential storyline opportunities right there. I love that. And the one thing that I really do want to tie into the Fermilab site, just off-site there, it seems like there's a really big like nature preserve as well. One of the things in the X-Men books right now is they have revived this mutant island, like it's a living island called Krakoa. And this was the catalyst for the new X-Men back in the really early 80s when, like Wolverine joined the group, and Colossus and Nightcrawler and Storm, and, the ones that we really now think of as the core X-Men. They were brought together to rescue the original X-Men team on the island of Krakoa. And at some point, the island died, but now they've revived it. And in doing so, they have now worked to try to bring all of the mutants that have died over the years back to life. Krakoa is something now that can reanimate and give new life to mutants that have passed. Which part of the storyline I'm not real crazy about, because now it basically makes all of the X-Men completely unkillable and immoral. But they have now become a sovereign nation in and of themselves. And it is their sole purpose to perpetuate the mutant race. And Poet probably would have gotten an invitation to come and be a part of Krakoa, but because of her connection to the Strange Academy and the students and so forth, she feels like her duties really lie there. But within that wilderness preserve around the Fermi lab, they probably would have planted a seed of Krakoa, which would allow you access to Krakoa and vice versa. So that it may not come into play like right away, but I think you need to at least know that it is there. So that if you did feel like you needed to contact the X-Men, they literally are just, you know, a step away from you if you needed to, through that gateway. But yeah, I've been working on putting together the campaign, and I'm really excited to, you know, get this thing rolling. And there are probably about 5 or 6 chapters in this little campaign that I've put together that will have a definite beginning, middle, and end. And once we get finished with that, we can kind of maybe drop it at that time and move on to something else for a short period of time, or continue on with it, you know, if we want to. But this is going to be, I think, a really neat way to see where these characters are after all of these years. And now, even though we all live in different cities and so forth, it'll be a lot more world hopping than what it was when we were playing back in high school.
So you've written all of these things that are in this folder?
In which folder? Oh, in that folder? Yeah.
All of them?
Now, yes, with the exception of the Realms of the Occult.
And you designed them. They look so professional. They look like Marvel released them as the official TSR products.
Yeah, I did the layout for all of them. Yeah.
You did?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Jesus Christ.
But the Realms of the
real
Occult
work and time. I mean, these are amazing. One of them's amazing, but the fact that you did this many.
Yeah.
So you do this just for fun, for the community?
Yeah, for the community. And then like the ones that are like Mouth of Madness and forget the name of the other one. The 2 World War II looking ones that I've got on there. Those are ones that I actually did run for one of the local gaming groups here in town. But yeah, put those out there as well. So.
Art in it, everything looks amazing. Yeah, that's really cool, Chris.
And it's a good group of people for the most part. You know, they're very collaborative, and like the Realms of the Occult that I was getting ready to talk to you about is something that some of the guys had worked on bits and pieces of on their own over the years, but they never really could figure out how to put it all together. So I kind of took all of the information that they had and compiled it, and then pulled all of the character stats and everything together, and formatted it and designed the books and so forth. So
you guys should look at it. If you haven't looked at it, go to his on our Facebook. The link will take you to the books I've written for the Marvel Universe, and open that and just look at a couple of them. It's incredible.
Yeah, it's a passion project for sure.
Well, that's for sure. I know you're not making a lot of money off of it, I'll tell you that.
Yep, zero. Yep.
Really cool.
One of those on there, the Street Wars, I think, was
that's one. I just looked at. That was with your kid, right?
Yeah, Sullivan. That was his first campaign, and I took everything that he and I did. I was talking to the guys on the Facebook page about it, and they were like, you know, you should just put it into a book form. And I was like, yeah, you know what? I think I'll do it. And a lot of that stuff that happened in there, again, I just let Sullivan take the lead, you know, at 7, 8 years old.
Pages of design stuff. It's insane. That's really cool. All right. Well, I guess we'll get our own book then, won't we? Maybe.
Yeah, maybe so. So yeah, I talked to Jeff and Andy, and I think the plan is that in 2 weeks from tonight, we'll start that campaign. So if you guys are good to go, I definitely will be. The first adventure's already written. I'm ready to rock and roll on that one, and then I'll be working on the rest of them, you know, in the meantime, so that we can be prepped up. Now, it's not going to be railroady, but I definitely have, you know, a definite through line plotted for these. But
derail my story, right?
No, it's all right.
You know who you're working with here, Chris. You know who you're working with here. You never know.
Yeah, I know. I can get you back on path.
Cool. I'm
So-
looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Tyner,
Yeah.
so the thing that I wrote on Facebook about adding that stuff to my character, what did you think that you wanted to do with that? What do
Yeah,
you
let me
think
take a
we
look
should
at that
do?
here real quick. Like with the miniatures and the sculptures and the drawing and all of that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
I love the idea of that. And I mean, and I think that that is because, you know, she definitely has an affinity for magic. Probably even more so to an extent than Christy does, because Christy's is really more of a natural ability that Doctor Strange has really opened her eyes to realize that even though she is a mutant, what her powers really are is a connection to really the multiverse. And because of the way that she accesses it, it is really magical in that ability. She probably doesn't need to spout the poems, but the only way that she really knows how to activate it is by the recitation of, you know, her prose. But for you, it's the connection to limbo. And you didn't really have anybody to teach you the ways of magic until probably later in life. And it probably would have been Doctor Strange finally that maybe took you under his wing to kind of, you know, show you, you know, how to handle, you know, the stuff in Wonderland. And he probably latched on to your creative side in, you know, creating the miniatures and doing the watercolors and showing you basically how to paint your magic, basically. So I think, you know, if you, like Christy, you know, will have to, you know, come up with ways to define how it is that she's, you know, conducting whatever spells that she's conducting. You have to be able, Quincy, if you knock this fucking thing over one more time. Anyway.
I don't know why you say you're not interested in cats. It's delightful.
Oh, he's heard me argue with Quincy plenty of times when we've been playing Red Dead.
This is why cats are terrible. You'll see my dog has not disturbed us this whole time.
Mine's
Sleeping in another room.
Sleep over here. Mine's asleep in the bed right here.
Your dog?
Yep.
Yeah, because dogs are awesome and cats are terrible.
Yeah, my dog's right here. I think he's sleeping right. No, I don't think you can see him. Right there.
No.
Dog's sleeping. That's because you can't see him because he's so quiet and sleeping.
Chris, I'll get you a bucket for Christmas and that'll take care of Quincy.
Oh,
Okay, thanks.
Your turn again.
I'll go back on mute now.
Oh, that was good. That was good.
But yeah, Dana, I think if you can start, you know, already thinking about, you know, how can I use the miniatures and how can I use, you know, a paintbrush or what have you, you know, to kind of create the magic that you want to create. You know, that's that'll be a good. They call it foci or like a focus, you know, for the power.
Okay.
So, you know, be thinking in those terms, you know, when you're wanting to do something that's outside of, you know, just hacking and slashing with the sword and teleporting with your mirror discs. And that's how I kind of visualize her teleportation power is basically she creates a mirror and then steps through it.
Okay.
You know, like through the looking glass, right?
Maybe.
Yeah.
Okay.
So do any of you guys have any questions about the Iroshan thing before we move into it?
No, ready, just jump in. Figure it out as we go. No, I'll read the stuff that you put in there before we play.
Okay.
I started reading the. I realized I had all the rules in my head already. Like they were there and somewhere deep inside, they just came right. I can even list. I can list the abilities without even looking at them, which is insane since it's been 35 years.
Mm-hmm.
I may not get them exactly, but I can even list the numbers. I was just Amazing's 50, Incredibles 40, Good is 30. I mean, it just was like that.
Yeah, good as 10, but close enough.
Well, close enough. Yeah, I haven't looked at it. I haven't checked it. 75 is monstrous and
Unearthly is 100. Yeah.
100.
Yeah.
Well, that's pretty close. It's not
Yeah,
bad.
yeah, that's good. That's good for 30 years. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I haven't looked at it. Good is 10. I thought there was a fair below good. Good
What's
below.
that?
I thought there was a fair below good.
Starts with feeble at 2.
Feeble, yeah. I don't
Feeble, poor, typical, and good. Yeah.
Yeah. Typical's what?
6.
Oh, well, I don't quite have it. All right. Anyway. All right, Mr. Hancock, it's been a pleasure. We're not going to see you again for Marvel. Is that right?
Yeah, no, I'm going to bow out for a little bit, but
All
thank
right,
you guys so much for letting me play. It was awesome. I hope to do it again.
Yeah, and
Let's
stay on the page, Mike.
Oh,
you
yeah,
know,
thank
I
you.
will.
and
Let's do a
I'll let
one-shot.
you know when we start
Icarus
moving on to
or,
something else.
Let's do an Icarus at Fiasco for one night at some point or one day or something. Just
Yeah, if you have any of them that are like for an evening or something like that, I should definitely be able to hop back on if I have a little bit of notice. So
Sure.
Yeah, that sounds great.
cool. Well, have fun
Wait,
doing your Marvel game.
Thank you. Well, great to see y'all, Evansville people. I guess we'll be
Yeah.
doing Evansville stuff here again soon.
It was a good Friendsgiving tonight.
Thanks,
So
Chris, for all your work on all
There
this
you
stuff.
go.
oh
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
Thanks for being our guide, our leader, our savant.
no, I'm loving it.
I'm glad we didn't screw it up too bad.
Screwed it up just
There's
enough.
always next
Yeah.
time.
I'll try harder next time. Anything you come up with, I'll make into a comedy. So you can kick me
Think
out.
more.
Yeah. Chris goes, Game Master spends a plot point. Your character died. You're out.
That's why you got to do Fiasco. It is a comedy. Like the whole thing of Fiasco is a comedy. So, you know,
I
you
would
can
love to
get
try
your
that. I think that
element
would be awesome.
in your element.
That sounds like fun. All right.
Okay,
All
y'all.
right.
Have a good night, everybody.
Have a good Thanksgiving.
Okay.
Couple weeks.
Yeah.
Bye.
Nice.
Bye.
Hey.